So, hello everyone. I am very happy to be today with Paul. Paul is a great salesman that I met like a couple of months ago. Very happy. He's going to tell us and share his own story with communication, content marketing. I'm glad and cannot wait to learn all the things that he has to share with us. Hi, Paul. I am very glad to have you. So, without further ado, let's just introduce yourself. Can you just tell us a bit of your background and basically what do you do?
Hi, Amari. Thanks so much for having me on. My name is Paul M. Caffrey. I'm a sales preparation expert. And what that means is I'm helping sales professionals and some corporations build out overflowing pipeline, be able to close their deals faster. So ultimately they can be more successful quicker. And for individuals, account executives and salespeople, I help them become the undeniable number one candidates for promotion. So all things sales, that is what I'm about. 15 years in the industry. And yeah, you rightly mentioned we met at an event in London a number of months ago now. And it's been great to keep in contact.
That's cool. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation. So, I have some questions, basically basic questions, but I think it's important to put them back. Can you just rephrase and explain us the gap between and all the overall ecosystem between sales, marketing, and basically content production nowadays? Because we need to do all of them, right?
We do need to do all of them, and it's really interesting. There's a bit of a personal brand revolution going on, and we really are seeing that in sales as well. Particularly if you're now a startup or if you're a founder, the new school way of doing things is build your brand on the likes of LinkedIn, on whatever social network of choice, and then you'll end up with these raving fans. So your first few customers will be that bit easier to find. Equally, if you're working in sales, the term social selling has bounced around. So whether you work with a large tech company or one of the rising stars, we're being encouraged more and more to post on LinkedIn, to have that presence, to add value that way. And that makes it difficult for all of us to understand, well, what do we do? Like, how do we do that? And I guess for me, I'm in a unique situation, Amari, is obviously, we speak on a semi-regular basis that I'm coaching and working with people in this ecosystem. But also, as I am coaching, I'm also selling my services to startups, scale ups, to individuals. So I too am in that bit of a content hamster wheel. And what it comes down to is you need to have that strong social profile and you need to have regular content going out. That's nearly like a new website, in my opinion. It's really a way for somebody to kind of check in and go, are you credible? Is this a real person? Do they continue to do things? And that nearly then gives you the right, when you reach out with your prospecting, for them to take notice, and they can see your profile, they can kind of see what you're about and decide, well, is it worth interacting with this person or is it not? And that really doesn't matter for whatever you're selling. That is the first protocol. Especially today, if you're looking to sell something and you don't have any presence online, that's going to be really difficult. Skeptical hippo eyes will kick in and you'll be in a bit of trouble. So then it's a case of, well, how do you do that? And that is, I guess, what we're going to get into today.
Yeah, that's content marketing is amazing. And there are one question that I always wonder, okay, should it worth it for me to invest time? Because we have like short-term content and we have long-term content. Making a reel or a story on Instagram that will be available just for 24 hours. Sometime when you have like 50 followers, you say, okay, I'm going to create a content that maybe 5% of my 50 followers, so 2% will watch. You're going to dedicate to like 1 hour to create that video. And then, after 24 hours, it's gone. So what's the point of being like working for social media platform instead of working for our own business? And that's really the short-term content, while they are, and I know that you will certainly share tons of advice on that point, long-term content, which are also on social media, content like YouTube, etc., that we can publish and that will bring you people on long-term. And I would love also to get some words and some experience from your book, because you wrote a book. And writing a book is definitely a long-term content strategy. So how all that goes together, yeah, can you just explain what's your point of view and maybe your own strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my point of view on it is something that it is necessary, and I used to get frustrated by that. However, what I realized, and this is even going back to a previous business where I built a very large audience, is that every post and every piece of content, it was really just doing two things. One, it was maybe building a bit of an audience. I might get another one or two followers or three followers. Doesn't sound like much, but if there are two or three people and all of a sudden actually they fall into my perfect, ideal client, that could be a significant amount of business. And then the second thing then that it's doing is, as I've said already, it's giving me that credibility, but it's giving a bit of value to people who maybe have followed me because they saw something semi-interesting, and then they think, oh, I'll see that enough and again, and then they'll reach a point where they actually have a problem that they might see me as the voice or the possible solution to. So it is one of these things that you're looking to do over the long term. And long term is quite interesting. So for me, my approach was, I thought, well, what's the one piece of content that can give you the most credibility? And I remember going to a number of conferences in 2018, 2017. I mean, like, okay, everybody has a book. Great. So I decided to go and write a book. Thought that can't be too hard. I've done projects. It took 3 years. This is before AI. I do have a little bit of pride that I released it a month before ChatGPT came out. However, I do think, God, it could have been easier had it been already out. But anyway, that's beside the point. So for me, that's an evergreen piece of content that I can reference to. It is a business card. It gives you a flavor of how I work, of what my beliefs are when it comes to sales. As I said at the top, preparation is key, and it really is about bringing preparation to what you do so that you work a little bit less, but you get better results from the work that you do. Because I ended up in a point where I couldn't sell anymore because I was out of time. And then I realized, well, the only way was to do things better, and then preparation is a way to get there. So that is the longer term play. But again, from a digital asset perspective, you can also look to do that. So it is essentially a lead magnet, although it looks nice and it feels great when you hand it to somebody. Even having a digital version of a book or a digital something is still that piece of content that you can actually look to turn around and, oh, there you go. There's a copy there, all over the world. And what that then means is you're able to give people a flavor for what you're like to work with, what you believe in, and some value that they can take away and get a win. And that's really exciting because your lead magnet, whatever it be, and maybe it is interesting to hear how people have used it and what they've done with it and how they've had success, because sometimes it's in areas and fields that you just never thought possible. So for me, why do I have that? Why go to such effort to make that? It's because I want to have one great thing that I can give, which is either relatively low cost, price of a book, or it could be free, that someone will actually take and get real value from. And that is the thinking behind that. Then the short form content, which again, I'm ramping up, and Amari, you've been helping me a little bit with that, so we may speak on that in a bit. That is just to slowly but surely to build the audience. And if you think of your audience that you're going after, particularly in sales, in the tech sales world, you might release a piece of content, 50-60% are never going to buy from you. They're just not your ideal customer. It's just never going to happen. Then if we look at that 35-40%, what about 35% of those aren't ready? It's the wrong time. They're focusing on something else. They have different priorities. It may be in the long term. And there's only maybe 3 to 5% of people who actually are ready to buy. So it's about getting them know that we exist, getting them into our ecosystem so they can come along, and eventually we've either reached out to them because we're proactive and we're chatting with our followers, we're chatting with people on a weekly basis, or our content provokes a reaction. And again, somebody comments, somebody likes, no harm in checking in and seeing where you can help them with. You never know what you'll get out of it.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. And definitely not thinking how many people will I get after publishing one piece of content, but like seeing long term, because we all know that we need to have like 7-8 point of contact before doing any sales. So we need to be in the loop for a while, and making sales, like cold sales, are very, very hard nowadays. Okay. Could you share a bit of your Okay, before to come to your process to produce content, I would like to maybe help our audience to decide what type of content should they go for. Because we talk about YouTube, we talk about videos on social media, we talk about podcasts, we talk about books, writing books. Honestly, I would not now start by writing a book, and it looks like you took that path. So do you have any advice with, of course, your perspective and your experience to help someone that is getting started with the personal branding thing, or maybe who just published like maybe 5 or 10 episodes or something, and who is dabbling and testing things? What would be your recommendation, and how could they decide on which media to focus on?
Yeah, it's so nuanced, so varied, and I've went through and I've tried loads of videos a day on loads of platforms, narrowing it right down to very few pieces of content on single platforms. Getting started, the number one thing is making a promise to yourself that you're going to do this consistently for a long time. So looking at this, I've looked on it from a 10-year perspective. Okay, so I'm going to, take time, I'm going to write the book, it's going to take a couple of years, then I'm going to look to build the following, build it on LinkedIn, then go to a couple of other media. But I was pick a long time horizon. If your initial posts and followers, it will be small. And even now, arguably, I don't have huge followings on any of these platforms, a few thousand here, a few thousand there. But what's interesting is, I produce a piece of content, I might put something out, and sometimes I might get 50 likes, 50 comments, and it seems like it's performing really well, and which is great, and I've probably got a few followers out of it. But then I might put out something else which is a little bit more niche, a little bit more specific, that only gets 5 or 6 interactions or likes or whatever, but I've got a lead from that. And for me, that's been like so much more valuable. But if you're from the outside looking in, you might go, oh, geez, that person, their last post only got 7 likes. That's terrible. You don't know. And so for me, that is key. I would say pick the one that you're most comfortable with and pick a fun experimental one. So for me, LinkedIn, no surprise, it's where a lot of my, it's where everybody I look to do business with lives. And I'm also then playing around with TikTok. So I'm uploading stuff there regularly, I've actually got a few leads off that platform, which was kind of a surprise. And that is something which I'm going to continue to do. And that's video, and that's very, very different. But it's, be consistent, pick something over the long term. And then when you're looking at the content to produce, there is no secret to what content is doing well out there. It's kind of nearly looking at, I did this thing which I thought was quite good. I did a cleanup of my social media. And then I basically unfollowed everybody who wasn't adding value. And the idea behind it was I just want to follow people that are actually on a similar mission or giving me information that I want to consume. And then I noticed that if you start to make content like the content that people that you follow, well, that's actually a good starting point. And I found myself, if I see a really great tweet or if I see a really great YouTube video, I might save that and go, I wish I'd written that. Oh, that would have been so good. But then I'll take a format and I'll do my version probably on a different topic, but I may take something from it. And the other thing which tends to kind of work a little bit easier is taking the emotion out of it. And what I mean is sitting down and trying to figure out what to write or what to say when I'm holding that, that camera up. That can be a bit tricky. But if I say, well, no, today is going to be a post about my, let's say, lead magnet. So I'm going to post about my book. So that's what my Friday is going to be. If I then know that, well, Monday is where I'm going to try communicate with my audience, and I might ask a question. So for example, this week, do slides belong in discovery calls? I mean, it's a bit of a topical thing that's a bit niche to my world of sales. But again, it's something along those lines. And then having each day similar. I've got a newsletter, and my newsletter comes out on Friday, so I'll then look at a Wednesday and I'll do a little bit, which is basically a little bump, which will be what I'll talk about a little bit more. So it's not an easy thing, but it's a consistency thing. And eventually when you get a few leads and things start to happen, you realize big followings, they're great. And when I get there, I'll be really excited. But when you get a bit of business off the back of it, I mean, that is fantastic.
That remember me something that we talk in the startup world, which are the vanity metrics. I guess you heard the term already. That's things that looks like spectacular. You think, oh, we have like 10,000, 1 million users. But if you are not making a single dollar out of it, it's useless most of the time. But it's
yeah.
where startups try to find new business models, etc. But that's another world. But yeah, when we are an expert or a coach, we need to focus on what brings leads and what makes what we do a business and not a hobby, because like that's the big difference between communicating about a passion and having actually a business. Okay, can we get deeper? What's your process to create content? Because you have tons of knowledge, experience. Where do you find your ideas? How do you maybe, so you mentioned monitoring people on social media that are in your industry. That's one way. And yeah, basically the process from the beginning to the end until you publish a piece of content. How you do that?
Cool. Okay, so my process, Amari, you're probably gonna like laugh at this. It is pretty simple and pretty straightforward. So the format that I'm always trying to get when I'm doing a piece of content, no matter where it's at, I'm trying to get some sort of hook or something that makes things interesting, and I'm trying to make it recent. So, for example, I might turn around and go, I was asked this question on a podcast yesterday, and then you see the question, and it's like, and it's live, I had to answer. And so do a little bit of a hook, something that kind of might grab the attention, then given either 3 or 4 steps. So do X, Y, Z, or actually just given a few tips. And then sometimes the final thing is just a soft call to action. So it could be, has this ever happened to you? Or my newsletter is here, you can subscribe here. Or comment below if you want to find out more about this, course that I have going on, whatever it may be. Hard or a soft call to action. So that's really basic and really simple and straightforward. And then the other thing that I do, which works quite well, is I just think of the questions that I've been asked in my coaching today or yesterday, and I just go, oh yeah, that was a good question, and I will answer a question that has been asked to me or I've coached somebody on recently. And typically, if I'm only looking to put out 1 or 2 pieces of content per day, that can be enough to actually tie me by. Because before, when I was trying to be really intelligent about it and doing a lot of analysis, I was spending hours on it, and it just wasn't worth the payoff. So simple as that. Think of the coaching that you've done in the last week or so. What were the good questions that were there? And then just trying to give them a little top and tail, interesting hook, the 2 or 3 pieces of advice or the 2 or 3 steps to follow. Then the sign off, offering people to do something, interact or whatever. And I'm aiming so it's Monday to Friday is typically when I'm doing that. So if I'm out and about, I'll just pick up the phone and do it on the phone, or I'll type it, type it if it's on LinkedIn. And then I've started looking at scheduling stuff on over weekends and things to go out. So a couple of platforms I'm using for that, although a lot of the apps are starting to offer it natively. So that's the process. I mean, no rocket science here.
And okay, that's cool. So you shoot your piece of content, then obviously, you throw it in the software, our software marketing automation.
Actually, that's probably something I glossed over. I guess if people are aware of Amari and the great work that you're doing, is obviously you've got this piece of software, Market and Automation Ninja. So for me, when I'm doing the pieces of video, so if it's going out on my Instagram, if it's going out on my TikTok, and also look, it can be on YouTube, podcast, whatever, but they're the main ones. I still follow that process of, I just coached this person at this startup hub about this, or I gave this talk and this question came up, and I'll just pick up the camera and I'll record it pretty much in one take. I've started bringing a little microphone, and I've started bringing a little kind of gimbal. It's not really necessary.
Yeah.
It's there. It's kind of handy.
This type of thing.
Actually, I think that's exactly what it is.
DJI OM3.
Sure, I'm going to reach up and pick up the same thing. And what's brilliant about the software is this is something that Amor, you gave me the tip of, that I can just stop and give a little bit of time so I can make sure I get it in the first take, so I don't make a mistake. So the video might be 90 seconds, and I'll stop, I'll say this, make my point, stop, on to the next one. and then I just drop it into a Google Drive, which is what Amari software it works. I use Google Drive for my business, so great. It's on my phone anyway. And then basically, I don't know, some magic happens. A few minutes later, I now have a video which has jump cuts in it, so it's pretty fast and smooth. I use subtitles; it kind of works well, especially with people who I'm reaching out to. They tend to maybe be in offices half the time, so that's useful. And then I've got this nice little outro which the team have pulled together, and that just goes onto it. So for me, what looks like well, I suppose it is a nicely and well produced video, but it's something that I've had an idea, I've picked up the phone, and then within a matter of minutes it's then published, and I'm jumping on the train, or I'm going playing wherever, traveling to my next thing.
Yeah, that's cool. And actually that's the vision of building things, because I was tired of spending hours editing videos. So I just wanted a software to do it for me. Okay, that's cool. And thanks for sharing the process. But now regarding your content strategy, what frequency do you publish? And what are the results that you've got like during the past few months, for instance?
So the frequencies is something that I went up and down on. So what I did, I've experimented, and this kind of does tend to work, where I'll look to put out 4 or 5 videos or 4 or 5 pieces of content in a day. And then I'll get a little bit of a boost, and I'll get a lot of interaction. But that's just, for me to put out the level of content that I will be proud to put out for 5 pieces a day, I don't have that bandwidth. I'm too busy with clients and other things, right? Because that's the thing in itself. So I've pared it back to one piece of content on one to 2 pieces of content per day on LinkedIn, and then looking at doing the same on TikTok and Instagram. So it's not a huge amount in that respect, but it's consistent, and it's there again and again and again. And then what happens is there'll be a new course, or I'll be doing a partnership. So I've got a new course coming out with an American company, and I'll just start throwing extra content on for a few weeks. So I'm going to be focusing a lot on helping people become undeniable candidates to get promoted. But that's just going to be on top of the daily content which is there. And I think that's quite important, that just because you're promoting something else, or your focus has changed, I think having that core consistent hum and just throwing the stuff on top is better, because I've stopped doing that before, and that really has interrupted the rhythm, and it's stopped me from getting back to it, and I think it's affected audience growth on platforms as well. So
yeah, regularity is very key. Okay, and you mentioned that you are publishing on several platforms. Is it the same content that you publish everywhere? Is it different type of content, or do you repurpose it a little bit? How do you save time? Because like creating like 6 pieces of content if you publish on 3 platforms twice, it's a lot.
Yeah, it is. I mean, how do I save time? The video content it'll be the same on Instagram. It'll be the same on TikTok. I suppose I overlooked it, but I would probably pop it up onto YouTube Shorts. If the content lands under that minute threshold, it goes up there. If it doesn't, I just don't bother. So the video goes into multiple locations. And then the text piece, that tends to go into the LinkedIn, or sometimes the Instagram, depending if it makes sense to go onto the other or not, because sometimes it's a bit long and wordy.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, I have 2 last questions for you. I don't know which one to bring first. Okay, the easiest one. What are the challenges that you went through and the mistakes you've done, and maybe you've learned from? And if you had some advice to share to our audience, what would it be?
The 2 pieces of advice. One would be, keeping it simple. So picking one platform, picking a posting, picking a level of posting that you can stick with, and then having a theme or an idea for that day. So as I said, what works well is Wednesday, I'm going to post whatever is on my newsletter is coming up on that. So that makes that a little bit easier. Then there's another day when I have another idea of what the style that I want to post, and then looking at my calendar and seeing, well, is there something there which fits that? And actually, if there's something better over here, then I'll just use that idea. The mistake I made was going onto all the platforms, and all of a sudden you can end up having 20 or 30 hours of work a week if you wanted to
Mm.
post 5 or 6 times a day on each platform. And then the second one, I guess, is probably no surprise, is there's lots of great analogies out there. Like we've all heard of Steve Jobs speaking about AI and how the fastest runner can be beaten by the slowest person if they're cycling a bike. And there's this lovely one that's just circling around. And it kind of comes back to how can you use technology to give you an advantage? And yeah, you can edit the videos, and I've done that where you're recording the video, then you're uploading onto your Mac, and you're pulling it into QuickTime, and you're dropping in your little outro, and you're then putting it into your Splice app for captions, and it just takes more time than you think it will. It'll take twice as much. You're not that good at it as well, typically, and you'll make mistakes, and it's whatever. It'll get put out. And so then it's a case of, well, how can you save time? And Amari, you and your application is fantastic because it saves that time. It means that I can just go drop it into a Google Drive, hit publish. So using technology to help you, I think is really, really important. And that can be other things like you're writing LinkedIn posts a lot. Well, then what are the 6 or 7 prompts that you would want? Putting it into ChatGPT and then getting a version 1, which is my idea, put these prompts on it, and then taking that and then editing and making that your own. Like there's a lot of different ways of using it, but use the technology because everyone else is. And if you're not, you're just wasting time and getting left behind.
Yeah, totally. Okay, the last question I got for you, because that's your expertise. How, and I think it would be an entire topic, maybe for another podcast one day, but let's just like try to provide some clue on how we can apply that. How can we prospect and use social media to convert someone that don't know us into a real customers? Do you have some tips, process, or something? It's basically asking you to summarize your book in a few minutes, but yeah, a couple of things that you could share that would be useful for our audience.
Yeah, well, look, absolutely. I guess the book in itself is really more for people who are working in sales, or if you're a founder and you're looking to sell, and it's how to actually prepare, do some cold outreach to get somebody's attention, and then take them on the journey. And if it makes sense, they buy your service. So on that perspective, it really comes into, and this will feed into your content as well. The whole crux of the idea is that if you put the other person and what they want to achieve first, and then helping them achieve that, they will then look to actually engage with you and help you in the same fashion. So if we know we're going into a sales meeting and we know that we would love to land this piece of business, what can we find out in advance? What do we think they're working towards? Well, how can we be prepared to make sure this meeting delivers for them? How can we be prepared to make sure that over the long term that they reach their goal? If you end up in a random conversation with somebody, you're at a conference or you just end up speaking with them, straight away think to yourself, what do you reckon they're looking to achieve? How are they going to achieve that? And then if you know, they're at a conference, you've taken a day away from work, and you might want to actually improve your sales. Well, there's a great sales talk over here. There's a guy called Dan, check out that talk or whatever else. And then they feel that they want to give that law of reciprocity back to you. And it can be a boring conversation into an interesting value add. But then when you take that to your social media content, and this is something I think of, well, if I'm that person, if you're your ideal customer profile and they're scanning on your social, what do they want to know? And it's really an opportunity for you to solve micro problems for them. So if someone has asked me a question and they've had a problem and I've coached them on it, probably is going to affect other people. So by me saying, well, this is something that I spoke about yesterday, and actually here were the steps to fixing that, and that person happens to have that issue, this person's good, or they might agree with it or whatever else. And so then it really is thinking about that. It's your little videos are interrupting somebody's day. Can you make it valuable to that person?
Yeah, I like it. I like the terms micro problems, because you won't be able to solve their big problems, because usually the big problems is like your services, your solution, or whatever you have to offer. But you can solve micro problems by giving some gold nuts or points that that can basically change their daily tasks. So that's great. I love that that things and for the conclusion. Okay, excellent. Paul, thank you again for taking the time today. Any last advice, books, yours, of course, and maybe others, content, anything that you would recommend to anyone?
Oh, there's so much great content out there. So look, my book, The Work Before the Work: Hidden Habits Elite Sales Professionals Use to Outperform the Competition. You can get that on Amazon or any of the big book retailers. So that's available all over. And then I guess if I'm thinking about things from a I guess two books that jump out at me that can be really, really valuable, and kind of thinking of, and of your audience here is, number one, showing up on social media can be a little bit tough and a little bit daunting. So, The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman is a fantastic book because it basically gives you what you need to show up and perform. So if you were to take the learnings from that and apply that to your social media content, it will make going on video or putting your opinion out there that bit easier. And then if you do end up in some sales conversations, and no doubt that's what a lot of the goals are, Phil M. Jones, actually co-author of Work for the Work, he has a great book called Exactly What to Say, and it's 23 phrases that you can actually leverage to build in. So if you end up in a little IM conversation, or if you end up actually speaking to people from your social media, that you may be able to bring that conversation to a more positive place, and help that person make that decision that they need to make.
That's cool. Thank you very much. Yeah, definitely I would pick some of them. And yeah, anything else where people can learn more from you, a website where they can find you?
Yeah, website paulcaffrey.com. Newsletter is the best thing to sign up for there. A lot of great stuff. Mentioned the book, and then the other side is I'm most active on LinkedIn. So if you want to see what I'm doing, that is the best place. And yeah, feel free to I guess rob and duplicate anything that you think might work for you. And then yeah, if you want to see me jump on camera on TikTok, and if that's a new world for you, Paul M. Caffrey there as well. Okay. Thanks so much, Amari, for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time, for sharing all that knowledge with all of us. And yeah, looking forward for our next chat. And until then, take care, Paul. And yeah, thank you again. Marketing Automation Ninja.